So you're all very welcome to the Translocal Adventures in Developing an Urban Systems Community of Practice, one of the many events in the TNOC Festival. The structure of our event today it's 90 minutes. We're going to break into three half hours. The first, general introduction, then second into breakouts in groups to share the ideas together, and then the third to feedback together and discuss what we learned together. So this festival is about building better cities for nature and all people. And if people want to get involved in the online discussion, the TNOC Festival hashtag is being used. When you go through into the site, I don't know if people have had the chance yet, this is where we're being brought to the imagined city, an image by an El Salvador woman, Frida Larios. And from there, it's the gateway into what sort of world we're trying to think about. So as TNOC say, a lot of what we are trying to do with this event is experimental. Lots of people, time zones, languages, ways to interact. We might make some mistakes along the way, but please be patient. So they've got lots of different things going on here. They've created this world in the garden. This is just showing for some people what it's like in there. You ramble around. They've got a bar inside there with music going from the lists of people. Now, we've also got a harvest document. The link is in the chat, and if people go on to that, it'd be great if you could just copy paste the little pictures so we get an idea on the map of where everybody is from or have worked or is based at the moment. So what are we doing today? Well, we're developing an urban systems community practice. This idea of fractal thinking is one of the things we're going to explore, and kind of an image here from Curitiba in Brazil. This idea of a river basin is built up of many sub-basins and then sub-basins within that. And that's one of the themes that we look at a little bit in some of our discussions today. When we go into the groups, we're going to break out and look at the project of what is this community practice ecosystem in different areas. So GEN, the Global Eco-Village Network, they've identified the social, the culture, ecology, and economy. So when we go into groups, we can talk about these things, these kind of themed areas. But there's also the integral design of how they all relate together. And that's the actual framework of this event today. So the structure of our event, when we break out in the second half hour, we're going to go into breakout rooms or listening rooms. We hope that people will be willing to go into the breakouts and discuss and share their insights. I'm sure many of you here are very involved with lots of projects, and you're dying to tell the rest of the world or the rest of these groups what you're doing and to try to help us move forward. Also, we have listening rooms on social ecology and economy. And in those rooms, we're actually going to talk with some of the people involved in some projects here in Lisbon who are looking at these issues. All of these listening rooms will be recorded, so people will get to see them after anyway. And there's not much discussion in those. It's really just presentations and short, direct questions and answers after. So this idea of the kind of fractal view that we're looking at, if you imagine that this big thing here is the TNOC Festival, then there's loads of different events. This is our little event here. And from that there, we've got listening rooms and we've got breakout rooms. And within each of them, there's many, many different things going on. So this idea of the fractal view about it, how we can start conversing together, sharing insight, and those ideas making their way through and up in through the system into the wider levels. That's one of the themes that we will be looking at. So there's a few kind of suggestions or instructions in the harvest document. When you go in there in your groups, if you don't have a facilitator, please select somebody who can feed back at the later stage and share some of the insights from your group. And there's other things in there. There's also the Miro, that's our working space. And you'll get to see that. Sarah will explain that a little bit more, but you can get to have a look at that as well. Why are we developing an urban systems community practice? Because there is no planet B. In the last few years, thankfully, we've seen people really realizing this, people taking to the streets and pointing out that we've got a serious problem. Of course, we've known this for a long time. The scientists have pointed out for a long time, but we now understand the urgency to act. So who are we? We're three different groups that are interconnected. We're ECOLISE, Communities for Future, and Urban Arenas. ECOLISE. ECOLISE is the European Network for Community-Led Initiatives on Climate Change and Sustainability. So this is a meta-network of existing networks in Europe. It's got many different groups within it, including Transition Network, the Global Eco-Village Network, Permaculture, ICLEI, which is the local governments for sustainability. And it's also got academic support from Drift, where Georgia is from, in Rotterdam, and the science department in Lisbon, in Foucault, and I'm part of that group. So this network is trying to try to facilitate a network that is discussing things together. It does many, many different things, including the last 4 years, it's got the European Day of Sustainable Communities in September. Hundreds of people, not only in Europe, but around the world, on the same day or a week around that day, putting on events to show the solutions that we've already got in our community solutions. We've also got policy. There's much work has happened on this, and I'll go into this later on in terms of how the Communities for Future project is helping on this side. Also supporting in some of the big talks, like in the COPs, and things like that. Knowledge commons, the idea of a process which is more open and where members can participate in a more open way, sharing knowledge together, co-creating, inviting more people to participate in the construction of this, and the fact that it's more open. It's not closed off behind doors and up on shelves. This is very important in terms of us moving forward together. And actually this process of knowledge commons, we just use a wiki, and there's many different wikis that people are working on. That's led to, in 2019, to the first status report of the findings coming from the community-led initiatives in terms of what is a sustainable Europe. And that's led mostly by Tom Henfries and Gilles Peñalops. In the last year, ECOLISE has kind of reshifted and reorganized itself, especially after Fridays for Future, to develop communities for future. And they've broken into a different kind of system of different circles of inspire, enable, advocate, and learn. And each of those is working on different sections. And that's what we're going to look at later on. So now, urban arenas. This is the UrbanA project, which myself and Georgia are part of. This is a 3-year project funded by the European Commission, and it looks at trying to understand what's going on, looking about sustainable and just cities, but not only that, but also trying to assist in action through the kind of the wider bodies that we're involved in, like today's event. It's got 4 arenas in different cities in the 3 years, and it's led by 7 partners, but 3 of those partners are already part of the ECOLISE network. So this is very much an ECOLISE kind of ideas are being implemented through this project. It's also exploring blended arenas, how we work physically and digitally together. And this is something that ECOLISE was doing before COVID, but now we've all had to adapt to Zoom as best we can. But still we could go further with this. And I think this festival is really pushing the limits of how we can go further by opening up the garden and other spaces to connect. So this is kind of behind the scenes of how we actually enable these processes. So the arenas in November 2019 in Rotterdam, about 80 people came together to discuss these ideas. That led to, on the wiki, 33 approaches for sustainable and just cities. And that's coming from all the different research and mapping of hundreds and hundreds of projects. Then in Barcelona last June, we had identification of 10 drivers of injustice and urban sustainability. And that was very much with difficult times because of the lockdown, but some really interesting insights and very much aligned to a lot of the degrowth thinking that's been going on. The next event is going to be in March, and that's in surrounding about the theme of governance, and that's in Berlin. But as well as that, we're developing a community of practice. And this community practice is really this kind of circles within circles of the people who are participating in this process. The consortium members, but then the fellows, about 20 people who are participating at these arenas, then the people who go and participate in the arenas beyond that, but also then people who are turning up and participating outside the arenas. And that's something that we've been looking at in a long time. Just a point about this is from Wheatley's ideas of the idea that we had networks, but then developing that to communities of practice on certain themes, and then that those communities of practice have a greater influence to make the old system obsolete. And that's really why we're trying to develop this ecosystem of these different COPs working at urban systems. So in our Knowledge Commons, we've developed a wiki. It's in different languages. We've got lots of information. It's not just text, there's images in there as well. We've also had COCOs. These are our events. They were going nearly every 2 weeks, looking at different people's ideas or work and exchanging and trying to give bigger voice to this. That goes out into blog posts and videos like what we'll do after this event today. So learning from cities, different groups working in cities as well, like Luis and Marvila, where the community there have actually taken on the city council, fought for a green space and won. And there's huge transformations going on. The community changing their own territories by becoming better organized. So trying to bring the voices of people like Luis and the community to other communities that are trying to do likewise and enable bridges for them to go, how did you do this? Or what tools did you use? Film nights have been going on. We all talk, watch a film, then talk together after. We've got social media. We've also got podcasts. So if you're there, you can go onto Spotify, you can find us and many others and listen to some really interesting takes on what is this sustainable and just city. And we've also got a challenge for you to send us 3 minutes of what you think is a sustainable and just city. So how are we developing an urban systems COP? Well, from Fridays of Future to Communities for Future. And Sarah's going to take over here, but just to give you an idea, the website, the Knowledge Commons, and actually this is the Miro board that we're going to look into, where we zoom in and zoom out. And if you're interested in getting involved with this, the next talk is on tomorrow at 5 o'clock CET time. So I'll stop sharing and I'll hand over to Sarah from ECOLISE and Communities for Future. Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's a pleasure to be here with you. So I'm a project officer for ECOLISE and I'm working closely with the Enable domain, but I'm also part of the Municipalities in Transition project and the of the Municipalities in Transition system. So to navigate here the Communities of Practice ecosystem that we are building together with some members for the Communities for Future program. I'm going to share my screen with you. Is it visible? Yeah, okay, great. So as the Communities for Future program is about the mainstreaming and widespread for community-led action and a communities of practice ecosystem that connects, inspires, and supports different communities of practice would be an effective medium to mainstream practices, tools, experiences. So through a series of events, we've been co-designing this concept, this idea with a few participants, we started out with the session on the 2nd December on a Communities for Future session that you can watch on our YouTube channel on communities of practice leveraging impact by learning together. And for this session,
Sarah, sorry to interrupt. Could you maybe zoom in a little bit so that we can see a little bit better?
Like this?
Is that better? Maybe a little bit more.
Have you shared the link on the chat also?
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, for the participant, you can also enter the Miro board that Duncan shared so that you can also zoom in directly by yourself. Sorry again, Sarah, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. So in this first session, we explored together the idea of setting up a collaboration framework for communities of practice that would work for eco-social just transition. And at the time, we brought as a proposal this diagram. as showing elements and possible interactions as a kickstart for discussion and imagination. So around, we set up this domain, which is the area of ECOLISE for working for eco-social just transition that would support the relationships, the learning, and the collection of body of knowledge, tools, and methods. So we have the communities of practice arena, where representatives of the diversity of the communities of practice would meet. We would have integration seminars, workshops, and communication platforms to support communication and the relationships. And all of these would serve this circle of communities of practice on various themes like urban systems, community energy, economy, livelihoods, etc. From this session, this first public session, a group of people showed interest in continuing working in this ideation and this concept. And we've met twice already, on the 16th December and on the 3rd of February. And we've just been going deeper into this, into how this could become a reality. First, brainstorming around the why would we need a communities of practice ecosystem, who should be there, what are we trying to do, to achieve, and how. And so now, and all this harvesting is actually here in the mural board. You can explore it a bit, and we'll also have a breakout room on this to go deeper into the question. And our next working group session is on the 2nd of March. And if you want to join this team, you can write me an email here, and we can talk. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the presentation, Duncan as well. So now I would like to ask if anyone has some question for both Duncan and Sarah. Any question? Everything clear? Do you have maybe some comments? I saw in chat that some were mentioning that it's very European focus. Maybe we can discuss that. Also, Duncan can share a little bit more also on the kind of the vision for the Community for Future to go a bit also beyond the European focus.
Yeah, from the UrbanA and the ECOLISE side, well, some of us have connections with different corners of the world, and still very much supporting groups that are active in their communities over there. But in terms of the UrbanA process, this is part of stage 3. So stage 1 was asking the fellows to share their stories and their work with the wider community through the COCOs, the community conversations. Then stage 2 was going beyond that to people kind of who are already participating somewhat in this community. But now stage 3 is us trying to connect with different global systems. So we're already discussing with different groups outside of Europe to give them space to share their views or their processes on how they're tackling urban problems. So for example, in the Municipalities and Transition project, we've got the project at Barrio Sao Paulo. We're hoping to have them speaking soon. They're also part of the Global Eco Village Network. And that's just one example.
Thanks, Duncan. Are there any other comments or anything you would like to share? Is there somehow related to some of the project that you are working on or some of your communities that you are part of? Would you like to share any links or connection that you see? I see in chat the CNET shared that there is like a common connection with the network in Goa. Can you maybe just share a bit more about this?
Gosh, well, I think that was more of a comment about how that's relevant to some of the social movements also taking place over there at the moment. I think the situation and the system is quite different at the moment, especially with the political situation. But I think there's also a lot of movement or people trying to set up what I guess is it reflects the communities of practice that are sort of structured within this project that could also be relevant over there. And it'd be worth sharing some information or some knowledge and on looking at how we can kind of develop those networks. So that's kind of my reason for also being involved.
Thanks a lot for sharing. Yeah, definitely. I think it will be very interesting to further connect and also see how to further collaborate. And also, as Duncan said, like we have this community conversation now, like we had before, like every 2 weeks, and now it's like once every month. And that's also an opportunity for people working like in different aspects to really share what they're doing. And it's really a way to share experiences, to learn from each other, and to also connect. So that maybe could be also an opportunity for joining further. Then I see Job that he unmuted himself. Would you like to share anything?
Yes, I noticed in your presentation that a lot of it was based on communities of practice. So how do I, as a human being, one of so many billion, I have different personalities within myself that may represent different communities that I identify with. And each time that I identify with a community, I say, there's a need here within me that says that community might fulfill that need here. So all parts of my life, I've done different activities, I've done different parts of things that have fulfilled different parts of me, that even as I did the activity in the moment, the present moment, I did not understand that I was fulfilling that need in that moment. So as one human being among 8 billion, have lived my hours of progression through life, have through communities steadily built myself up to a point where I am becoming a sustainable whole system, because I identified what are the needs within me that I'm looking for. So if I can come up to, I don't have anything that I need, I am a complete human being, what are the single needs that you can identify for the community that each community at some point says, yes, I'm good, how can I help you out? So I, as a community, I reach my one need that I have. So where can I look around and say, how can I help that other community also reach that place where they say, I'm good too? So that it slowly, light by light by light, you build up your communities so that now you have a whole, and we're then sharing.
Yeah, I can come in very quickly there, Job. So in terms here in Lisbon, in the last few years, we've been really affected by gentrification and housing crisis. So people are really going through a tough time. And lots of Europe, last 10 years, over 10 years with the economic crisis, there's still the repercussions of that. So for us, trying to connect with groups who are working around evictions and being driven out of their communities, trying to understand that, trying to make bridges between other actors that are in other cities that are dealing with these processes which have happened there, trying to learn from them, trying to enable processes where we can learn together, and just on that one theme, for example. So, I lived in Barcelona. Barcelona, because of that, have actually brought out this, very strong, the Fearless Cities Network, the Rebel Cities with Ada Colau and others. So trying to connect some of our communities in Lisbon with those communities over there through this process. That's just one response. There's many, many more, but hopefully we can get into that as we go through the rest of the event. But I think we need to move on to the breakouts.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Job and Duncan, and also thanks, Beatrice, for your comment. It's definitely a very important issue, but unfortunately now we don't have time to go in depth there. But let's see, maybe at the end, like in the plenary after the breakouts, we're going to have some time also for this discussion. Now
just check the time. So as I said, I'll talk to you a little bit about the Municipalities in Transition project, and then zoom in to Lisbon and share a little bit of what we've been doing here in this area of work. So first of all, the Municipalities in Transition project is, let me just go to the video. Yeah. So the Municipalities in Transition project, it comes from the Transition Network, where we've come to the conclusion that we've all for many years been experimenting all over the world to try to look at our communities, to try to see what's wrong with them, and to try to find solutions for our problems. And there was the international core team of the Municipalities in Transition project, together with Transition Network. They wanted to look if there was any place where there was a very, like it says here, reality-proof system or model that could be applied in many places. And so they looked at 72 cases all over the world to see what people were already doing. And they came to the conclusion that there was not really a model that answered the questions that they thought needed answers. So to find real solutions in a real world environment that could work. But this was not a bad news. This gave them the opportunity to design a new system, to design a new model. And so by looking at projects from 2005 to 2017, in 2017, the international core team of the Municipalities in Transition project, they designed this new model. And then between 2017 and 2019, this model was tested in the MIT pilots. So these were 6 communities, one in São Paulo in Brazil and the rest in different places in Europe. And so for these 2 years, these communities in which we were included were testing. This was sort of a beta design of the model. And so we were testing how this model worked. And then in 2019, we evaluated all of this together and designed a new version of the Municipalities in Transition system. And since then, until now and ongoing, we have this phase, which is called Municipalities in Transition Pioneers, which are communities which are using this new version of the Municipalities in Transition system. There's a set of goals in the Municipalities in Transition approach, but we might sum them up with this definition, which is that the Municipalities in Transition aims to protect the community from the huge challenges we are facing, moving towards a local economy in balance with the ecosystem and the human social systems. We aspire to create a safe, prosper, equitable, collaborative, resilient, and happy community acting under a global philosophy. So this is a sort of sum up of the goals that implementing the system has. It is based on a set of principles. Those of you who might be familiar with the Transition Network and the transition way of looking at things might know the head, heart, hands principles, which means acting on the best information available, taking care of people, relationships, which would be the heart, and doing practical stuff. This would be the hands. And so the whole system is designed to have all these 3 categories into account. And then it has 5 functions, this system. The first one is diagnosis and evaluation. So it's a tool for diagnosis and evaluation, co-designing ideas and actions, co-implementing them. Then there's a toolbox function, which I'll mention a little bit later. And there's a cultural leverage. So there's this function of changing the way our community looks at things, looks at how it organizes itself, how to tackle sustainability issues, and how to move forward. In very practical terms, the methodology has some different tools. So it has a grid, which is mostly used to both do the diagnosis and then the evaluation, and it helps us co-design our project. So it has multiple functions, but this grid is a very big part. And it helps us look at our communities in a systemic way. Then another part of the methodology, which usually is a big game changer for the communities, is the use of sociocracy processes in the way we work together. Especially in the way we decide things together. So we use sociocracy in deciding what we are doing, but also in the way we organize ourselves. We go to sociocracy to inspire ourselves on how to work together. And then there's also the database, which is a sort of repository where we have methodologies, where we have concrete projects that have been working around the world. And the very interesting thing about this database is that it is built on a pattern language model, which means that not only are the entries in the database linked to each other, but they're also linked to the grid. So when we are analyzing projects or when we are designing them, we can connect them to the database and see, for example, what other people are doing around the world in that area, or what type of tools we have, methodologies that we could use in order to have a more impactful action. And then there's also the Municipalities in Transition community, which is the sort of community of practice. And as Duncan mentioned about the Urban Arena community of practice, it's multi-layered. So we have the people who are on the field already using the system. We have people who are interested in the system. We have webinars. We have tutors meetings. So there's a whole lot of different levels on the community of practice. And so this is a very, very general overview. We could talk about hours for hours about the Municipalities in Transition framework. But the main thing is that this is a tool for transformative and systemic change that has been having a very big impact on the communities that have been using them. So coming now, making a zoom into Telheiras. Telheiras is a neighborhood in Lisbon, the capital city of Portugal. Our neighborhood has a population of about 17,000 people, and it is integrated in a parish, the Lumiar parish, which has 44,000 people. Since 2013, we have which is called the Parceria Local de Telheiras. This is a network of local organizations, mostly NGOs, and like you have the residents, the neighborhood association, the scouts, the schools, so all sorts of social and community actors. Together with the parish and the Lisbon municipality, we come together regularly to look at the neighborhood, to discuss ideas, to share resources, to share information, to do events together. And we have been working on that since 2013. And in 2018, we made a work group to address sustainability issues in our community, and which has been a part of the Municipalities in Transition process since 2018. So just to let you know, in the first phase, the pilot phase, we had 9 people in our work group coming from 6 NGOs and representatives from the municipality and from the parish. And now in the new phase, we opened up the process, and now we have a work group with more than 25 members from 8 NGOs, representing 3 schools. We keep having the municipality and the parish, and you have a lot of individual people, neighbors, people who are interested, who are a part of this group. I'm just now entering the last part just to share with you some projects that we've been doing. So in the first phase, the pilot phase, we were asked to do 2 projects. One of them, we called it the Healthy Lettuce project. This is a project that did vegetable gardens in 5 schools from the neighborhood, and also a daycare center for the elderly. They all came together to do these vegetable gardens. And what was the impact on doing this with the MIT system? There was a huge difference because this idea came from an NGO that already before the project was doing trainings for individual teachers on how to use vegetable gardens in schools, but they just gave them the training and there was no follow-up, there was no assurance that they were going to be implemented in schools. And by looking at it and redesigning it with the Municipalities in Transition system, we involved 2 NGOs, the Parish Council, 5 schools, and the daycare center. More than 20 teachers, educational assistants, and daycare workers received training on how to use vegetable gardens as a pedagogical tool. And the design already had the implementation part in it. So you can see by these pictures that there was, for 1 year and still ongoing, we had this huge project, because then we also added in things about healthy eating, food waste, and all sorts of things that were around the vegetable gardens. Then the second project was that we are starting a shared resource center. This means that we'll have a place in our community, in our neighborhood, when where you have lots of tools that people can go and borrow for a couple of days. So the idea is that there are a lot of tools that you only use once or twice a month, and once or twice a year, and so you don't have to own them. The neighborhood needs to have them, and so we'll have this space where people can go and borrow these tools. And now just the last slide. For this new pioneer phase, we are developing a lot of new projects. These are just some of them. So we have a project that involves 5 schools, 6 NGOs, and the general population to put in our neighborhood, all around the neighborhood, bird and insect houses, also houses for bats. And this will involve the whole population. We'll make workshops, we will build them together, identify the places together. And so this is a project that we now have. We have projects on community composting. There are small projects that, like, just putting swings on the street so that people can go on the street and they can, like, have swings on the trees and they can have some fun. We're doing swap markets, and we're also building an energy community that Miguel will talk a little bit more later. And also, since we are doing all of this inside the Municipalities in Transition system, we are doing it in a participatory way. So we have this process where people from the community can give their ideas. They can say what they think is the priority for the neighborhood. And so whenever we have these ideas, we make work groups that are open to everyone, that can join and design and implement these projects, always looking at them through the Municipalities in Transition system and using all those parts of the methodology. And so this was what I wanted to share with you. And now I'll pass it to Miguel so that he can talk a little bit about the energy transition parts.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm showing my screen, right?
Yeah, now, yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Luis. It was a really nice introduction about the work that you have been doing in Cleric for a long time, and that I joined some time ago as well. And yeah, it's really nice to listen to the whole process from the beginning to what we are doing now. And I'm trying now to talk a bit about the energy transition and how it can be brought to the local scale. And to start, I can say that I've been studying this subject from around 2015 when I did my master thesis in Cleric, and now I'm doing my PhD thesis, and I'm focusing on this topic. So some quick backgrounds. We all know that climate change is very important. It's a key issue and requires urgent action at all scales, and that the larger portion of greenhouse gases comes from energy and comes from cities. And as such, the energy transition needs to focus on cities and neighborhoods. And I believe, and it's a common ground for many people, that there are 3 key priorities. It's energy efficiency first, to use the energy in a more efficient way so that we don't waste. It's renewable energy, to move to cleaner sources of energy, and also social justice, to leave no one behind and to end energy poverty. So the local scale, the system that we have today is highly centralized, it's market-based, it's inefficient, energy is seen as a commodity, and it's damaging to our society and to the environment. And in the future, we want this system to be more decentralized, we want it to be owned by the people, we want to be efficient, energy should be seen as a basic human right that underpins a lot of other human rights, such as housing, such as education, and energy should be clean as well. And why the local scale that we are looking at? It's because it's the closer to the people and communities. It's at this scale that we can listen more to the people, we can work with them to fulfill their desires. There are 4 Ds that are often mentioned in the energy transition. It's to decarbonization, so that the energy that we produce does not produce greenhouse gases. It's decentralization, to produce energy in a more distributed way. Instead of having big power plants, we can have it spread, we can have it in our cities, we can have it everywhere. It's to have it more in a democratic way, owned by the people, and also more digital, so that we have all this data, all this information. And if you look at this picture, we are now at the passive consumer stage, that we are at the end of the line and only pay our energy bills. And we want to move more to the other phases, to be a prosumer, to produce our own energy, to act as an energy community, and to manage it ourselves. But there are a lot of barriers. It's very difficult for a normal citizen to undergo this process. Most people don't have the time, they have other priorities. Information and knowledge is not available for everyone. Lack of investment capability, and also economic interests from big corporations that are different from the local people, market obstacles and regulatory obstacles. Just to introduce this concept, it's the positive energy district concept, where an urban district or neighborhood produces more energy locally than they consume. So this neighborhood, for example, Cleric, needs to be high energy efficiency, needs to produce energy in a renewable way, and also needs a resilient and flexible grid. 2 other concepts that are important is energy communities, where the community itself organizes it and produces its own energy, and also one-stop shops, that are places that concentrate all the information and make it available and help people to undergo this energy transition. Mm-hmm. So moving on finally to the Cleric Energy Group, the idea is to have a community-led working group that's focused specifically on these topics of energy. The vision in principle is aligned with the PET concept, where we produce energy locally and use it in an efficient way. But this process needs to be based on co-creation. So the idea is to truly engage with all the citizens in the neighborhoods and design these in a co-creation way. And the 3 key strategies is to inform and empower citizens, to facilitate energy efficiency, building retrofits and renewables, and in here to act as a local one-stop shop where we can provide people with advice, we can facilitate their contacts with the businesses that work on this area, and also maybe, if possible, to co-develop own community energy projects. So as a neighborhood, we produce our own energy and try to include everybody. And the way forward, this work is going to be integrated in a group Pegada that we spoke about. And the idea is to engage the community as well as other key partners. And in here, of course, the municipality is very important. The group needs to, in time, to define its goals, vision, methods, and then, of course, to move on to concrete action. So this was just a brief overview of the Cleric Energy Group to be created.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for the presentation. As I said before, we've been working together on this, but now I'm even more enthusiastic about creating this group here in the neighborhood after listening to Miguel. So now I think we still have a little bit of time. If anyone has questions, commentaries, anything they want to say, now it's an open conversation. So please feel free.
Sure, I'll ask a question or comment. I'm really fascinated by what you're doing in your own sort of social, political, cultural context. And I just wondered if you also are able to reflect on what makes it work in one municipality or region or country versus another? And is it working across different regions and across different European sort of governance systems? Or is there something unique about what's happening in Lisbon or where any other places you're familiar with working that makes it work? Because my perspective in the United States is, that our political system is so different and so messed up right now that there are a lot of small communities doing things like this, but it's very hard to connect it to kind of bigger processes of transition that work on a larger scale. So it seems to work on micro scales, but it seems like you're really trying to work out how to get this scaled up.
Well, about that, what I can say, I think, is first of all, I mean, we are very focused on the micro scale also, but I think we're very lucky that we have all these other scales. Like, for example, the work that Duncan talked about, the work that ECOLISE is doing, Community for Future, all these works. And so we are part of many networks, the transition network, the transition movement in Portugal. So there are all these connections. And I think this helps a lot, all these communities of practice, in fact, that help a lot to, I mean, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? Take a look at this method, take a look at that. And this helps a lot with our work. But about the context, I think, yeah, on the one side, we are very lucky. You need to be a little bit lucky to be at the right time, at the right place for these sort of things to happen. Because, I mean, we tried this before. What we are doing now, we tried to do this in 2010 with the transition initiative, and it didn't work the way we wanted. We had a lot of people coming up to our activities, but from outside the community, because they were interested in the thematic aspect of it. But we didn't have people in the community to work. So I think one of the most important things is that we started building community, not looking at sustainability and this transition, but just making community, making connections, making people know each other, making people connect, doing this both with like the general population, with organizations. That's when we founded this network of NGOs and the municipality. And I think that was the first step that we came to this point in time where we were, or there was trust among people, the relationships were created, and then we said, okay, why don't we look at sustainability issues? And then we had the pieces in place. So I think community building is the first step for this. But then also, I mean, you were mentioning that, sorry, I'm just finishing, Shelley, sorry. So you mentioned, I mean, for example, in the United States, it might be more complicated because of the political context. But I mean, I believe, I'm an optimist, and I believe if you have the micro scale doing this everywhere, there's no way we won't change. There's no way the transformation won't occur. So if the only way to do it is through the micro scale, then let's do it in the micro scale everywhere, and then the macro scale will change for sure. But go ahead, Shelley. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, so I think it's just following up on that. And I think this issue of scale is really important. So I am a Houstonian. I live in Vermont now, but was involved in the transition movement there. And what we generally found is, in Houston, there's this group of greenies. We're involved in everything, right? And it's the same people trying to make things happen and getting very little traction, to Mimi's point, and not a whole lot happening. It's the permaculture group, it's the transition group, and they're all intertwined. It's all the same people. Even I'm an architect, and it's all the same people, right? And so it seeping into the community actually is very difficult, or even the permaculture community, it tends to be insular. When you're talking about a scale as big of a city as massive as Houston or Philadelphia. So what I'm curious about in Lisbon is this a citywide initiative, or did you start at a neighborhood scale? Because to me, the only way this is going to happen here is when you get to the much smaller scale, to a neighborhood scale. Or if now I'm in Vermont, like you could do it on a town-based scale, and I think it would have more traction. But when you're talking about a massive city, particularly in the States, it's hard.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of really micro, local, neighborhood scale projects and approaches. Because what we've been seeing and what I believe is that if you start by working at the neighborhood scale, first, as Miguel said regarding energy, but this is transversal, you can a lot better answer the needs and know what the people want and what their desires are. So, and then what we see in Lisbon, I think, is that if you start having all these different neighborhoods doing by themselves this sort of projects, but then comes the network, then oh, these people are doing that, these people are doing that, and then you come to a point. Of course, Lisbon is not like the super green city, not at all, but I mean, if you start doing this in many different places and people inspire each other, then you start to see, okay, the city is starting to do this transition, but not all together, but all in a network. But I really believe you should start on the neighborhood scale, also because of something you said. When I mentioned that in 2010 it didn't work out, and we said we must stop and take a step back and build community. One thing that I think sometimes all these eco movements, and as you said, the permaculture movement, transition movement, and we did it also ourselves, we try to build community based on these issues that we think are important. But then we won't build bridges. We need to build bridges first. And if you need to spend some years talking to people and build community without bringing up any of these eco subjects, then do it, I think, And I mean, there were two very interesting ideas coming out of the first phase of the Municipalities in Transition project, things that really worked well in other places or in many places. One of them is that, for example, by engaging other organized groups or municipalities, the first step is not going to ask for help or to say, hey, we have this project and let's do it together, but do it the other way around. Say, hey, we are a group of people, we want to do good stuff for the community. How can we help you? What are your needs? What are your desires? Not our. And then when you build trust, when you build a relationship, then you can say, hey, and what do you think about having like a food forest in our neighborhood, or but the trust and the relationship must be there before. And another thing that is really huge, this might sound funny, but it's really huge, is food. I mean, food brings people together. One of the most inspiring projects that we had in the Municipalities in Transition project was one from Spain, La Garrocha in Catalonia, near Barcelona. And there's this environmental NGO, and they opened up like these super nice restaurants. And this was their first step to engage the community. And then people from the municipality will go there to lunch, and they started talking to them. Hey, so you're from municipality. Hey, do you know about this project? And then everything there goes around food, but they have this super community, super engaged with a lot of relationships built. Amandine, you also wanted to mention something?
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for the presentation, Luis and Miguel. Well, my question is kind of related to that, but also because maybe me and Luis have the same background in terms of transition town methodology. So we came from many years ago, and my question is, as you said on your presentation, that you see a lot of improvement when you apply MIT system. So my question is, first, you think that even if it's a question about Portugal, it can be correlated with other countries. If the past ingredients or methodology about transition network should be adapted to MIT system. So, for example, the initiatives in Portugal should in fact apply the MIT system instead of being fixed on the ancient model that doesn't work anymore. And you also have your experience, I have my experience. So you are validating in your only initiative that the MIT system that is open and always in adaptation can improve
the initiatives that come from that transition hut. So my question is that if you think that is replicable in Portugal to the other initiatives, and in fact, it can open a question of if the methodology, the ancient methodology is not more adapted, and we should all move into this validation system of the MIT system because it's open and it validates itself with time. And if it will open all of that you were telling now with the question of Shelley and the dilemma of the initiatives working in Iceland in terms of closed groups like permaculture aficionados, bicycles aficionados, but we are all islands, green islands, and the MIT system opened that. So this is a more thinking questions. What do you think about that?
Well, thank you for your question, Amandine. So yeah, it's true. I mean, as Amandine said, we have been in the transition movement in Portugal for many years now, and we've seen like around 2010 or 2011, there were a lot of new initiatives coming up all over the country. There was this huge network, and then many of them, after 1, 2, 3, 4 years, they just stopped working. And I think, at least this is just my view of what I've seen happening, is I think many people were too fixed on the rules that say how you should implement a transition group, and didn't have the flexibility to adapt to local context. So when you ask me if I think the new MIT system could be like the new transition model, well, I do think it's an improvement in many ways, because as you've said, a lot of the theory behind it comes from systems thinking. And so it tries to stop all these green islands that you mentioned, and it tries to involve everyone in the community. So there's a lot of this systems thinking behind it. And also it brings a new governance model through sociocracy. And so it really is a bigger change than you're used to. So in one way, I would say, yes, I think the MIT system could help a lot people who are struggling with transition initiatives to get a new energy and to get a boost. At the same time, once again, I think if now we just all start using the municipalities in transition system, then there's a risk, because it's not the holy grail. I mean, you have to have the context for it to work. So I mean, I really think, and I can't stress this anymore, the thing I think is most important is first to build community, and then to see if this is the best for your context. It might not be the municipalities in transition system. I think it's an improvement over the old transition model, but you really have to see, it's not easy, but you need to have the feeling if that's the thing for your place or not. Another thing I think is important, Amandine, you know this, recently there was this point of situation meeting between Transition Portugal Hub and other hubs. And their experience, I think it was from Canada and Brazil, they said, I mean, we don't, for our transition network in the country, you don't need to be a transition registered official with this model. I mean, transition is people doing stuff to change the world in a positive way for something that we all share, ecological, socially, etc. So also we need to stop getting stuck. Oh, you are transition, you are permaculture, as you've said, as has been mentioned before. You are a bicycle guy. You are, you know, we are people, and this is true for the neighborhood scale or if for the network scale. We are people trying to change the world. We are not many. We need all the energy we can have. We need to work together. So yeah, but summing it up, I really think the municipalities in transition system, because of systemic thinking and sociocracy, brings a lot of new stuff to the table, but it might not be the solution for everywhere. Miguel, I don't know, and also Danielle is also involved. I don't know from your experience with what we've been doing, if you want to share something also.
Yeah, I can say that I think it has worked fine in our neighborhood, in Cleric, but I'm not sure if it would work on a more disaggregated neighborhood where there is not a previous community, where a lot of neighbors in Lisbon that are more people don't know each other, or they go through financial difficulties, they are more vulnerable. I think in Cleric it works because it's a neighborhood that is able to use this system, but not all neighborhoods can use it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just to agree with what Luis and Miguel both said, also in Cleric, the fact that there are several entities that are already linked and connected and working together helps a lot in accomplishing this approach. And we just received a warning of 40 seconds left.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say that yes, we need to look to other neighborhoods and to spread these good movements elsewhere.
Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, we have 30 seconds. I just wanted to thank you so much for joining this room and for this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I mean, we could be here for hours, but let's hope we meet again sometime soon, right?
Thank you. And
Yeah.
Luis, could you put in the chat box a link to something that explains sociocracy? Because
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Sure. I'll send it to you by the chat. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Back. I think we are all back. I hope the ending was not too disruptive. Sometimes it's really very disruptive to end the breakout rooms. I was the discussion that you had. Did you enjoy? Yeah. Okay. So maybe we have a few minutes left before the end of the session at the Carter 26. I would like to just ask some of you if they want to share some of the main insights from the different discussion and also the listening room. So maybe we can start with the ecology group, the listening room of the ecology. Could you share a few insights?
So that's us, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I mean, so we presented some work that we've been doing in our neighborhood. So we've been using the Municipalities in Transition system, which is an approach to transformative and systemic change, to local transformative and systemic change that has emanated from a transition network. And we've been applying it since the beginning, so in all the phases of the project. So we just talked about a little bit of what is the Municipalities in Transition system, what type of activities have we been doing and how have we been organizing ourselves. And then Miguel, he presented specifically his work on energy local energy transformation. That's his area of work. And we are now creating a work group in our neighborhood to make like this energy community and to tackle all these energy issues locally. Then we had an interesting chat about what can work everywhere, what is local, the importance of relationships between local actors, how much does the context of each place influence what type of methodologies you can use or you cannot use. So there was this very interesting chat about these issues. Anyways, our session was recorded, so I think it will be made available in the future for people who want to check it. I don't know if any of the participants want to add something. That would also be great.
Yeah, I think it was that. It was to share the experience of the Cleric neighborhoods, and Luis talked a lot about the municipality in transition, how it has helped, and how it helped the transition movement in Cleric. And I just spoke a bit about the work on energy transition at community scale, trying to bring together the people to produce and consume their energy and not be reliant on big enterprises or big companies, and have a more sustainable energy system. And then we had a nice discussion.
Thanks a lot, Miguel. Thanks a lot, both. So if there is anything else from the ecology group, I would like to ask the social breakout rooms if you would like to share some insights. Maybe Sarah?
Yes, I can share a bit. So first we just did a quick overview of what is a community of practice, its aim, and then we went into we went into the structure of what a possible structure of community of practice is, and how it can connect the different circles. So the community of practice itself that can then have different needs and resources, and according to that create trainings, create events more open to the public to share and also to receive inputs, feedback. We gave some examples of existing community of practice. For example, within the municipalities transition project, there are several communities of practice. There is the tutors communities of practice and the pioneers, and they all used to interact together. There were some, there was a question on how to work with complexity in terms of conflict solving and just a diversity of perspectives and opinions. So we mentioned that a governance model is key for this, and one of the best that we know, one of the best methodologies we know is Sociocracy 3.0, and especially the method of decision by consent that is also used in the municipalities in transition system, is one of the best to tackle this diversity and to make discussion and actions happening and moving forward, even when there's this environment of prone to conflict, prone to more to discussions and arguments. And also because there is also for the sake of, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's just that I think we need to move on to the next group to give time to everyone to share. But is there anyone else from this group that want to share anything? Maybe just very briefly. No? Okay, so maybe we can go down to the economy group.
Okay,
maybe
that's me.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, I was moderating the group, and the participants also asked me to present the ideas that we harvested. If you don't mind, I'm going to share the screen because I wrote down what we harvested on the PowerPoints. Okay, just give me a moment. Here it is. I hope can you all see it? Yes, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this might look a little bit blurred. We ended up mixing actually case studies with needs. But in our discussion, we identified that local communities can have a very important role in identifying needs and harvesting information about how those needs are being addressed and covered, and also can have a very important role as in the socialization of people, in promoting self-responsibility and self-engagement, and the engagement of one's behavior in the promotion of sustainability at the local level. One thing that came up during the discussion was that public parks in cities and towns can be places of education for sustainability, as well as spaces of political expression, and also places of demonstration of best practices that can be upscaled namely by public policy or also by funding and sponsorship by private citizens, by companies, by the NGO sector, and so on. But we identified some obstacles to this process of upscaling and also needs that come from these obstacles. One of them is the structural constraints. One of the participants even called it a dictatorship of the market economy, and the structural constraints that it poses on the upscaling of transformative practices and on the sustainability and the long-term effect of transformative public policies. We also identified the need of combining a bottom-up and top-down approach, of building capacity not only for mobilization at the grassroots level and building networks, and then advocating the public sector on behalf of those grassroots networks, but also on how to work with top-down bureaucracies effectively. There's also a need to advocate for the taxation of externalities. This is an example. How to develop the capacity for mobilization, for mobilizing people and organizations for changing the tax system in order to tax externalities and to promote the redistribution of the income of that taxation directly to people. And also we identified the need for a regular and sustainable exchange of best practices at the international level of grassroots mobilization and public sector advocacy. That was mainly it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ana Margarita. Then I would like to ask the culture group. I think Diego was there as one of the facilitator, or maybe also someone else would like to share.
Yeah, it was me with Diego and Shenzhen. I can summarize. Yes. But so we spoke a little bit about something like cultural and sports events, and we spoke. Diego is originally from Colombia, but now lives in Brazil, and he was saying how sport is such a big thing that mobilizes people together, whether that be volleyball or football or the like. And we also spoke about a few other activities where it really brings people and communities together, and this included dancing, whether that be for sport or for exercise, as we spoke in both the Brazilian and Chinese contexts. We also spoke about natural and cultural sites, whether that be on an individual level, where community members create their own vertical gardens as a show of like culture and color, or this being a community-wide event. We also spoke about, personally, it wasn't big for us, but religion, how the shift towards kind of eco-spirituality, whether that is through an organized religion or your own spiritual ways, how that is kind of occurring in different places. And then we spoke a little bit about how to reimagine this study-work relationship, where in South America, there is the expression sem estudo, sem trabalho, where you don't study or you don't work. So what kind of other things can you do to contribute to the community? Whereas people traditionally, if you don't do either of these, you're kind of looked down on by society and that you can't contribute positively. And we just had one last one, which was about international cities being a place of like high migration, where a lot of like different cultures intersect, and how to accommodate for this, whether that be between different cultures or also between different generations, to promote like different modes of living and sharing amongst each other. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Yeah, if there is not anything else from this group, I would like to ask also another group focusing on ecology, if they would like just to share what they discuss in the group. Or maybe they're not here anymore. I think that's fine. So are there any other comments or any other things you would like to share? I think also we are actually getting to an end of the session with the time. So if any of you has other important things, feel free to leave the meetings. And I want to thank you very much for joining and for all the very active discussion in the group. I really see from the harvesting document and also from what you shared that they were all very interesting discussion. I'm going to just also give the word again back to Duncan, just for some final remarks. And then if you want to stay a bit more in, so also for exchanging more information and also just getting to know each other, feel free to stay, and we can stay until 6.
Yeah, so thanks very much to everybody. I think it was a little bit messy. We tried an experimental process in already something experimental, and maybe didn't pan out the best. But anyway, that's the way it is. We learn as we go. No, so I think some really nice connections were made, and hopefully people got a little bit about the diversity of the views, the approaches, the problems, the solutions that are here, even in this small group. And if we can learn how to connect better together at all the different scales with this diversity and go forward, then that's very interesting. And I think that's what really we're trying to do, trying to enable a process where more people and more groups can start joining and participating and helping shape the discussion. And eventually that's leading to helping shape policy in terms of what sort of worlds are being created. And if more normal citizens like all of us can participate in that, I think that's a good thing. So, so thanks everybody for being here. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days in this TNOC, this Nature of Cities. It seems really amazing. It seems that they're looking and trying to enable more and more people to participate. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll all see each other later on in the garden. I put the link there in the chat. I'm learning a lot in the few moments I've had to try to look around, and I hope you are all too. So there's the next Communities for Future event is on tomorrow, if people want to join that. And there's also the Knowledge Commons, if people want to actually help get in and shaping content and being part of the various teams working in this area. You're welcome. You're welcome to participate. So I think that's it. So if people have any last comments or anything before we're shut down, the space is open. So thank you very much and good luck in your adventures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.